Hi, I'm Arin Greenwood. I'm a writer with the Human Animal Support Services Project. And today I am thrilled to be talking with Diaz Dixon, who recently joined Haas as the Maddie's advisor for external affairs and partnerships. Did I get your title right, Diaz?
You did, Aaron. Thank you for having me.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for being here. So, as I understand, you've been involved with Haas for quite a while now, but your role has recently changed. Can you talk about what you were doing and what you will be doing?
Yes, so for a good while, I was on the executive committee. I was recruited to come aboard and help have some of the conversations about the direction that we were going to be going with the animal welfare world and the social service welfare world, and how we could really take a look at the challenges, the barriers, as well as potential solutions for both of those worlds. It was a really fun position to be in with the EC and working with like really talented individuals. And as of late, the last couple of months, we had some discussion that I stepped out of that role to come in and do more on the ground work so that we could have much more of an impact in these particular relationships that are needed outside of animal welfare.
And what does that mean? What is that going to look like?
Well, it's going from, they're both very visionary, but this particular position now allows me to take a lot of the statistics and data that we know. 70% of Americans own pets. We also know that there are a ton of people out there that are struggling with mental health issues. And then collaboratively, we know that being a pet owner is something that is a really strong solution in helping people cope with the daily stresses and just not feeling so alone and desolate as people have been feeling, particularly more and more after COVID. So this particular position is going to allow us to framework conversations with governmental entities, large corporations that haven't typically seen that match with animal welfare and social services. And we want to allow them to continue to be a part of the solution, or to be a part of the solution even more so. And this role is going to be really driving that with intentionality.
So this this really ties into what you've been doing. You have a background in animal welfare and also in human welfare. So you've worked a lot. I mean, most of your career, I think, in the human agency side of things. How does that work kind of inform your work here at Haas? How does it influence what you think that we can be doing here?
That's a great question, Aaron. You know what? Working the majority of my career in human services, I know that there are always large groups of people that are asking for help, but there are oftentimes many people out there that want to help and they have no idea how. They're like Ricky Bobby. They don't know what to do with their hands. They're just completely lost, and the path hasn't been really laid out for them how they can be instrumental, whether it's writing a check, being a donor, long term, or coming in and volunteering, or even spreading the word. So now is a time that's really critical in this particular word that in this world, I can translate a number of those successes that I've had along the way with great, smart people around me, in laying the message out so that it's very clear what the need is, what the problem is, and finding people who want to be a part of the solution, but they don't know how, and illuminating a path for them so that we can have impact. And a lot of these solutions have been right under our nose, but we've only worked in our small silos and looking at how to solve those. It's time for us to stretch ourselves and to be uncomfortable.
Oh, tell me about that. I was going to say, I mean, this seems like this sort of foundational thing to me is that we're no longer keeping animal welfare and human welfare siloed. That these are really interconnected fields. But people have already heard us talk about all that. I want to hear about the uncomfortable part.
Well, the uncomfortable part is stepping out and doing things that we have never done before. Having big dreams and actually jumping and taking a chance to have conversations with people that we are entities that we never thought would even listen to us. And oftentimes people are ready to listen. We're just not ready to relay the message, or we're not ready to relay the fact that we do need help. And those uncomfortable, nothing great ever comes from just sitting in your comfort zone, being around people who are like you. You don't go to the gym and just look at the machines and then walk back out and feel great. It doesn't happen. You have to go in with intentionality and do things that aren't very comfortable, things you don't necessarily want to do. And what it does is it allows us the ability, when we're doing this with partners, with potential partners, it gives us the opportunity to friend raise. And friend raise is every bit as important as fundraising. Friendraising is actually better because it increases our network. And you have a lot of people in animal welfare who said, hey, I just came into this because I don't like working with people. Well, we can't help the pets, we can't help the animals if we're not helping the people that are in ownership of them. If we can't help the people who are writing the policies and the legislation that impacts those very same families. So we need to be uncomfortable. We need to do what we have not done before.
So can you give me an example of an uncomfortable conversation? Like this past week, who have you had an uncomfortable conversation with? What's it looked like? What's it sounded like?
Well, sometimes, you go to a particular foundation. And I've had an uncomfortable conversation with a foundation before when I was running Nevada Humane. And this particular foundation trustee said, I don't want to do anything with pets. We don't do anything with animals. There are too many people out there that are in need. And I could have just said, oh, okay, that tucked my tail between my legs and just turned and walked the other way. And what I did was I asked him, I said, have you ever had a pet? And he said, yes. So the uncomfortable piece is pushing beyond that first rejection. And I said, would you view that pet as a family member? And he goes, I see where you're going here. But yeah. And I said, well, if you see where I'm going here, let's continue to go down this road. I said, then think about the times where you come home and you had a rough day at work and you were always greeted with that love. And for some people, they don't have work or they don't have a house. And we're talking about getting them a house because they're homeless, but they're not going to leave anywhere, or they're not going to leave a situation. I ran a substance use treatment facility for women and children as well for 14 years. People do not want to leave their bad situations that could have domestic violence because they don't want their pet to be left behind somehow, some way. This is a part of the family. And it caused that particular trustee to stop for a second and say, okay, I still don't want to talk about pets yet, but you got me thinking. And so then the next time I came to him, we had a conversation. He led with, okay, we need to talk about this. I thought about it more. And if I had stopped at the point where I was comfortable and just turned and said, okay, he's not someone who wants to talk. I need to go find someone let me go to someone who's given the pets already. That's comfortable. We have to stretch and push ourselves. And we have to think and dream about the things that we thought were impossible and see all the possibilities.
Yeah, and it seems like a great way to do that is by recognizing and describing the ties that bind us all together. I mean, the ties between the pets and the people, that helping pets isn't just about the animals, even though the animals have their own intrinsic worth and are worthy of helping on their own, but it's about helping. I used to, as a journalist, I wrote a whole bunch of times about domestic violence shelters and domestic violence organizations that were starting to open their doors to pets as well, not just because they recognize that pets could be victims, but because they recognize that often victims of domestic violence wouldn't leave their dangerous situations until they knew that their pets could come to safety too. So it was important to protect every member of the family in that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then when you're protecting every member, it's a win-win, and it's opening up the doors for greater opportunity.
So is that what you're going to be working on at Haas a lot, is sort of increasing the network with expanding the network? What did you call it? The friendraising?
Yes, friendraising.
I've never heard that term before.
It's one of my favorite concepts, friendraising, because we get caught up on fundraising, and friendraising is the foundation in which we should be doing. Because it's one thing if Diaz Dixon comes in and establishes these relationships, and then Diaz hits the lottery, goes off, does something else. But if Diaz friend raises for Haas, those entities are sustainable. They stay with us. It doesn't matter if Diaz is here or not. So it's important for us to really make those links together.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. And will you be doing this with the pilot shelters and the partner shelters too, helping them
I
to
would,
increase their work that way?
yeah, there's a big
Yeah.
part of that too, the power and collaboration. When I was at last time I was in animal welfare, there was a time where we had 12 cats that were terminally ill, and we sent them off to the prison, and staff was not happy about it, but they were, instead of living in kennels, they were now living in a cell. And within 3 to 4 months, 9 of those cats quit showing um, their symptoms.
Wow.
They came off of medication. They were given love, and they were giving love at the same time. It was a win-win. And it's these particular stories that we need to highlight, how these partnerships, if we reach out, can be very beneficial to both sides. And even there was another, we would take a lot of the dogs that were back in winter in the medical. They were in medical before they could come onto the floor. And instead of keeping them in the shelter, we were working with group homes. So a group home of 12 individuals would have this particular dog, taking care of it. We provided all the food, medicine, everything that was needed, but they were not living in the shelter. By the time they came back, they were so socialized and just used to being around people. They were just sure loves and joys that they were at the front of that kennel if they made it back, because oftentimes someone was graduating from one of those programs and adopted them. But that is a perfect example of win-win conversations that we can have with the pilot shelters.
That's wonderful. So what are some other sorts of, I guess, non-traditional partners that you see Haas working with, that you see shelters and other organizations working with?
Well, I think that there are a lot of organizations, particularly corporations, that might serve as good fostering locations. So you've got a lot of business entities now that are now looking at the benefits that having a pet around bring to staff. And those could be, so whether it's a corporation or a small business, and having those, they can be partners along the way. What this also does is it gives them increased awareness as to what you're doing in your local community. So now when you go to have an event, you've got built-in sponsors because you already have that friendship. That's the friend raising piece. You have people who want to come and want to be a part of, all because of the love that Scrappy gave them, that they were feeling on a regular basis. It's really looking at a lot of these non-traditional places that some people might scoff at, but
Hmm.
once you experience success with it, you'll see the power in it. And I believe shelters will see the power in it. And then communities will also be more engaged and say, as people are going in and visiting particular stores, whatever it might be, or businesses, and go, well, oh, is that you? Did you get a new cat? Oh, no, no, no. This is a program that we're working on. Now we're spreading the word in non-traditional places. So it's great marketing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is the fantastic marketing on top of everything else.
It
Yeah.
really
Oh, I
is.
love everything about this. Um, so this is what you're going to be working on with us. This is how we'll be able to expand our support for shelters and other organizations.
Yeah, this is a big chunk. There's some other pieces too, Arin, like really looking at our language that doesn't necessarily translate into the social service language, and shifting it, the glossary of terms that we use, and so that we understand when we're setting up these collaborative partnerships that we're speaking the same language. So in animal welfare, we say family reunification. Well, if we're going into a governmental entity and we start talking about family reunification, that doesn't mean the same thing for them. So we want to make sure we're not misleading, that they understand what we're saying and we also understand what they're saying. So we gotta bridge the gaps with that, with the language, and then really just painting a really good picture that we are using values as a bridge. This is about us wanting to be better all in all of our communities, and we can do this through values.
So that brings me, before we started recording, you and I were talking about one of the other things that you do, the millions of interesting, important things that you do. You go around the country doing diversity, equity, and inclusivity trainings at different kinds of companies and for different kinds of organizations. This is obviously a really important issue in animal welfare, and one that I feel like we're just sort of at the really beginning of even starting to really talk about, forget about, really fixing. So what are your thoughts about how DEI fits in with animal welfare? What is it that Haas can do to on this issue? What are you going to be doing with our shelters on this issue?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Arin, because diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging that is something I'm super passionate about. When I first dipped my toe into the pool of animal welfare, and the very first conference I went to, national conference, it was abundantly clear that there wasn't a lot of diversity, and I think it is a missed opportunity for us, but it's not necessarily on the animal welfare side that it's animal welfare's fault. What it is we just haven't had the avenues or paid close enough attention to creating this exposure to a lot of marginalized communities, that this is a field that they can go into, that this is something they could be passionate about. And so speaking to groups, and even me just showing up, I get to represent something that isn't very common in animal welfare. We need to break those stereotypes that it's not just white middle-aged women that are in animal welfare. There's so much more. We have so much to give, and we have a ton to learn by bringing in more people. It's the belonging piece is the most important. Diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Diversity is great. We have diversity. I mean, people are from different places and have different backgrounds. But it's the belonging piece, when we can have someone come and they feel like they belong. They really fit in. It's actually beyond fitting in, but they feel like they can be themselves, and make a difference. So it will open up the doors for us to be able to hire more people, because we're not just looking in one particular area or using just Indeed when we're looking, because not everyone is looking at it. It'll help us also be better in our communities. So when we've got people of color coming in to adopt, we can take a look at what are the implicit biases that we carry when particular people are coming in. What are the preconceived notions we have about what pet ownership should be? So those are things that I will constantly challenge us to think about along the way. It'll never go without being mentioned in important meetings.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I think this is really important. And is this something that you'll be working on both at Haas and also with our partner shelters and our pilot shelters?
Yeah, in every aspect of my life. Yeah. So every
Yeah.
spot that I have an opportunity to put my foot in the door and get my mouth moving, yeah, we'll be addressing it and talking about it and moving forward with it.
Yeah, good. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. Well, I can't end this conversation without asking you the heartbeat question, which is, tell me about the pets in your life who have influenced your work in animal welfare.
um, oh, well, first I got to start with my number one girl. PETA is I rescued PETA. PETA's 8 years old, and she was just a little puppy when we rescued her from Nevada Humane Society. And she is like, she's just, the only thing I can say is she's my girl. She is a loving, strong, super soft-hearted dog, and has been from the get-go. We go on leashless walks every night, along with Nala, my little knucklehead, and she goes to every Wednesday. She goes to Adventure Pet. They pick her up in a big Suburban, and she goes off on a 3-hour excursion off the leash in the mountains. So she's spoiled. Nala used to go, but she tore her CCL, so Nala has to stay home. Nala's my little 2-year-old tyrant, and she is a little pity. Oh, she's a rescue pitty as well, and she's gonna end up being a great dog. But she's still a puppy and still acts like a puppy. So those are the girls that I have right now, and they are. If I'm feeling frustrated or down, I know that as soon as I walk in the door, they're there to greet me in their own ways that they greet me, because they greet me in 2 different ways, and they are the reason. They're a good reason when I look at them and say, I need to do more.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really understand that. I mean, I'll tell you, during some dark moments during the pandemic, I looked at my pets and tried to see how content and happy they seemed to feel and tried to absorb some of that. And I feel like every single day they teach me something about how to approach the world and how to live in the world when things are scary and uncertain and difficult. And, they're there for us every second of that.
Oh my gosh, they so are, Arin. They so are.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
blessing.
Well, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Diaz. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arin. Thank you for the wonderful questions. And even more important, it's great to spend time with you. I greatly appreciate you having me.
I greatly appreciate you speaking with me, and I'll talk to you again soon.